All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our October State Advisory Council meeting. My name is Dr. Morgan Crossman, and I'm the Executive Director of Building Bright Futures, which is Vermont's Early Childhood State Advisory Council. As we are moving through our meeting today, there are times from a housekeeping perspective that we're going to ask our State Advisory Council members to leave the cameras on and ask everyone else to turn their cameras off. We are not at that point, so everybody can stay on for right now. We do have a shortened 1-hour agenda for today. That includes a regional spotlight on the Addison Early Care and Learning Partnership, which focuses on workforce and resilience and provides hands-on experience in creative and culinary arts to early care and learning professionals and children and families they serve. So we're really excited to have Cheryl Mitchell, Becca Kerr, and Darcy Bean here to present to us in a little bit. We also have a little bit of council business. So Dora, who is our research and data director, is going to talk a little bit about the point in time count for the BBF network. We are going to approve the minutes from last month's meeting, and then we'll have final discussion and a vote to endorse the 2023 State Advisory Council recommendations. So most of you know that in State Advisory Council meetings, we like to start with a mindful moment. And today we want to take our moment of silence to honor our colleague and friend, Mariah McGill. So Mariah had joined our team back in 2020, and she was tragically taken on October 26, 2020, which was the day of our State Advisory Council meeting. And Mariah was an incredible voice in the community for early childhood. She served as a regional coordinator for Building Bright Futures. She had previously served as the director for the Early Childhood Leadership Institute at the Snelling Center for Government. And I always get emotional when I talk about Mariah because we always spent time as a full team at BBF doing a lunch hour connection time. And we spent a lot of time getting to know our staff and really trying to know what drives them, what they care about, what they're excited about, who their families are. It's a really important part of the culture at our team at BBF. And Mariah shared that she has a love of baking with her daughter and the holidays. And that is something that she and I shared. And every time that I bake with my daughter, Amelie, I think about Mariah, and I reached out to her parents in this last week, just saying that we are all thinking of her and we really love and miss her. So I would like to take a moment of silence in her honor. Thank you all. So before we start today's meeting, I just want to make a quick note that we have a few less faces in our virtual cube space. We've received notice from a lot of our State Advisory Council members that they are out sick or they're home sick with their kids. So lots of people who are at home. And if you are here with us today and you can't turn on your camera, that's okay. We appreciate you being here, but just wanting to note that we have received many of the votes around our State Advisory Council recommendations via email. And so we will be able to meet our quorum with the folks that are in the room and who have voted virtually. So now we're excited to transition it to Beth to do an introduction of our regional spotlight.
Thanks, Morgan. Good afternoon, everyone. Excited to share some cool work happening in Addison County today. We are joined by Cheryl Mitchell, Becca Kerr, and Darcy Bean, who have been doing some work this year with the Addison Early Care and Learning Partnership to provide some, hands-on experiences in creative and culinary arts to early care and learning professionals and children and families they serve, working with some migrant farm workers. So on a cool partnership. So I'm going to hand this to Cheryl, who's going to share a little bit about their work. And then we will have some time for a question or two from the SAC if there are any. So Cheryl, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you so much, Beth and Morgan and everybody on the council. I'm going to give an overview of this project, and then Becca or possibly Kristen Dunn, who I see is here, will talk about what it was like on the ground at Mary Johnson Children's Center. And then Becca Kerr will also share what's been like from their perspective at ARK Childcare. So ARK is in Whiting, Mary Johnson is in Middlebury and Orwell, and I'm out here in Virgins. And I just was so grateful that you took time to honor Mariah. She lived with me the summer that she was 16. We did a lot of cooking and laughing together, and she's deeply missed. Yeah. So Addison County is one of Darla Senecol's 3 regions, the other 2 being Rutland and Bennington. Our region has been focused on both resiliency and also workforce development. We had a project through the good graces of BBF's Vermont Early Childhood Fund to really look at how you can promote resilience and also support the workforce. And what we're going to share today is just a small part of that project. Last spring, we did a college level course focusing on meaning making and creative expression. People like Melody Markin and Chris Storman and others came and shared the experience of the arts, the various arts, and how to help children use that to make a meaning of their lives. And then we help to support people planning and participating in the Summer Institute at Castleton. But the really exciting thing is working with the farm workers in our community as they share their culture with children in 4 childcare settings in our county. And Beth, I don't know if I can make these slides go forward or if that's what you.
Anna's doing the screen share, so you can just prompt her and she'll change.
Perfect. Okay. So in terms of promoting resilience, we thought there are very few people in our county who are more resilient than the migrant workers who have come here, from most of them from Mexico and Guatemala, a few from El Salvador. A couple of years ago, they made these graphic depictions of what their life was like coming from their home communities to a beautiful but really very not welcoming land. It's still a beautiful and unfortunately not very welcoming land. But as they have become more engaged in the community, we feel as if the culture is beginning to change. So what you're seeing are 2 dioramas. There are 10 of them that you can see at the Vermont Folklife Center. And the one on the right is crossing the desert. Most of the folks who have come either by swimming across the river and then walking across the desert or other very challenging ways to get here. Okay. And one of our dreams was that as they worked in the childcare programs, they would get to know the staff, and the migrant workers would get to know the resources available for families with young children, including theirs. And I think when Mary Johnson talks, they will talk about how important that is. So part of the workforce development, of course, was the course last spring, the Summer Institute, and now we're working on people being able to do either a training through Northern Lights that will give them credit for having been involved in. With Castleton, we're putting together a course that people can participate in. Okay. So this is one of the sites. Viva Sabor is the culinary collective. It's 14 people. You'll meet many of them later. This was one of the sites. It's Wren's Nest, which is a land-based preschool in Bristol, Vermont. We wondered, could this happen in programs that don't have kitchens? And the answer was yes. So there were many partners to make this project work. The Culinary Collective itself being the major one, and the 4 sites, Mary Johnson, ARK, Wren's Nest, and the Parent Child Center as the preschool and early childhood settings. The Open Door Clinic, who provided a lot of contact with the farms and also with translators. Council on Humanities, which is helping us with books. The children's books haven't come yet, but we know that they're on the way. Castleton University and Middlebury College. Castleton has done most of the workforce development partnership. Middlebury College has provided students as both tutors and also helping with the evaluation. Addison Allies provides all sorts of support to the migrant families who meet typically in the Champlain Valley Unitarian Church downstairs. A lot of the women, when we started planning back in January, said we want to be able to speak English to the kids and not have to use translators. Middlebury Friends Meeting did a lot of the transportation. Early Care and Learning Partnership is sort of the conduit, and then the Vermont Folk Life Center, who's the home for the art. So these are 8 of the 14 members of the collaborative. This was early last summer when they were out at the farm doing the planning about how they could actually make this happen. What were the resources that they brought? How would they know if the kids had peanut allergies? How would they be every morning in the program? Would they be other times? Anyway, it's an amazingly vibrant group of women, and I hope you will, and one man who is not here. And then the woman in the very front was their bilingual coordinator who helped really to make all this possible. So we learned a couple of things. One, it takes a lot of time to organize a multifaceted effort like this. And learning a new language really needed a lot of lead time, but working together as groups was just wonderful. And having this be a mutual project so that the childcare programs and the cooks decided together how it was going to work was really important to us. We encased the artwork in plexiglass, and it turned out, I thought I was just going to pick them up and take them to all the childcare centers, and I cannot lift them because they're so heavy. So that's a glitch that we're working on. We did realize, and as we all know, that financial recognition is both really respectful, and it really allowed the women and men in the collective to participate, and that the cooking together part has been wonderful. So I'll go to the next slide, and then I think maybe either Becca, if you're here, or Kristen, if you're covering for Becca. I didn't see Becca earlier on the slides. Would like to talk about a little bit what it was like on the ground.
I'm here, Cheryl.
Great. Okay.
So on the ground, so we don't have a kitchen. We're one of the programs who, when we were brought to this idea, were curious how it was going to work, and if it was going to even work. And it has. It's actually been a really amazing thing that our preschool kids and teachers have been able to experience. And I actually, just because I don't get to do the whole project with them for the hour when they're here, I asked one of my teachers to write me a little blurb on so I could kind of say what's happening in their eyes and how they're feeling about this program. And so our lead teacher in preschool stated that this program has benefited our classroom tremendously. Miss Maria and Miss Alex are delightful. They are so kind and patient with our children. We learn about their Mexican heritage, their language, their music, making delicious food and clothing. And they would actually like to figure out how to keep this program going because it's been such a positive experience. The kids are excited to see them in the morning, even though they speak very little English. The children don't see it as a barrier. They're actually really inviting and, eager to hear what they're saying and to kind of like piece it together. And then to try the food at the end, like it just brings that whole community aspect together. So we love it.
Thanks, Becca. And Darcy, I see, maybe we can go to the next slide. And we can ask Darcy to talk about the experience at Mary Johnson.
Sure. So we did it in one morning session. The chefs came to visit our program one morning, and they brought their beautiful little girl, Victoria, with them. And she was just tremendously in awe with the center. She was so happy to be there. And so on the day that they came to do cooking with us, they prepped everything, and then each classroom, we did small groups of children in our dining room, rotating, and the chefs were so friendly and really got into working with the children, and the children really responded to them. Everyone was really excited about this whole process, and they loved their lunch. They had salad and empanadas and flan for lunch, and many of the kids sat for a really long time eating their foods that they helped to make, and commenting how delicious it was. And one child said, "This is seriously good." And the chefs were really interactive with the children. And, there was a language barrier. Ricardo, one of the chefs, did speak some English, so he worked really hard to communicate with us and the children. And afterwards, one of the teachers said that when they got back to the classroom after lunch, they turned to their Play-Doh and started making empanadas out of the Play-Doh. So it extended into the classroom after the experience was done.
Thanks, Darcy. Kristen, I see that you're there. Do you want to add anything from your perspective?
It was amazing. I think Darcy said it well.
Thanks. So maybe we could see the last slide, and then I think you can get in touch with any of us. If you'd like to get in touch with the chefs, contact me, and then I'll connect you with the collective itself. And we'd be happy to answer questions. It was for us, all of us, I think, a pretty thrilling experience. So maybe we could turn off the slides and just see your beautiful faces. And if you have questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you all. That was awesome. And it was great to see the pictures and hear about the program. Yeah, is there a question or two? I'll see your question, Matt. I'm going to let SAC members lead, and if there are any questions, yeah, go ahead, Ruth.
Thanks, Beth. Well, I just have to say how proud I am of my Addison County early childhood educators. I know all four, Cheryl, Kristen, Darcy, and Rebecca, and they are all amazing early childhood educators and leaders. And this program just shows that. So thanks all for sharing how awesome our county is.
Thanks, Ruth. That's great. Flora, did you have a question?
Not necessarily a question, just a comment to say thank you. It's so important to showcase our immigrant workers and the great part that they take in our economy in Vermont, and how that most of them are actually undocumented. And it's really hard to have a process to be able to get a working visa. They can get licenses, but they can't get a working visa. So it's just, as a Guatemalan, it's really nice to see it. We don't see them showcased in the farm's websites. So to have you showcase it for our kids is wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
I might
Thanks, Flora.
jump in just and say one of the projects we're going to be working on this year is trying to get something called a Vermont Visa Passed. So the people who have been here for a long, long time, they're huge contributors to our community, could actually, the police department would like to hire some of the migrant workers. There are many other public service organizations that would like to be able to hire people. And until then, we'll just keep on figuring out ways to support them. But thank you all, because we know that the early childhood community has been so open and supportive. Head Start, the childcare programs, the open door clinics, and their equivalents in other parts of the state is really important. And
Thanks,
I
Cheryl.
just
There was
say-
a question. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
from Renee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you
So-
want to just reread or restate the question, because people might not see the question.
I might not see it either. It just disappeared.
Okay. Renee said,
what-
what can we as SAC do to support the scale up of this kind of work to benefit others in Vermont?
So I think a couple of things. One is paying attention in the legislature. Anytime there are opportunities for the workers to be more visible and engaged. For example, the Civil Rights Commission just did a big Hispanic Heritage Month celebration on the Green in Montpelier. The chefs from the collaborative came. Inviting the chefs to come is one really important thing. Maybe if you have an annual meeting, you could invite them. Supporting this effort to get a Vermont visa passed would be incredible. I think just reaching out in your communities. There are many, 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 many migrant workers here who, because they don't have status, are worried about being out in public too much, and just saying, we embrace you, we see you, we care about you. Yeah, and if you want to do this same program again elsewhere in the state, you can be in touch with this collective, but I think that we're hoping that they will develop in other parts of the state as well.
That's great, Cheryl. Yeah, so this collective applied for a grant from the Vermont Early Childhood Fund through BBF, and I know you received funding from other places as well. And so it's great to be able to see, you know, what is what relationships and what learning has come of it, and also that it can be replicated across the state. Yeah. Ruth, did you have another comment?
Yes, I had a comment that I have been going back and forth with Deputy Commissioner Gray about eligibility for CCFAP for undocumented children. They are not eligible at the moment, and so we are trying to figure out a way to get them eligible for CCFAP. So I don't know if that's something that BBF has worked on, but just know that I'm trying to work on it, and Representative Brumstead and I have also chatted about it a bit. So we're hoping to find a path for that.
I'm thrilled to know that. I'm talking with her tomorrow, and I didn't realize that you have already raised it with her. So I can reinforce what you have already brought forward. That would be great.
Yes, I have, Cheryl. And also, can you send me the information about the Vermont visa? I haven't heard of that yet. That would be interesting to have. Thanks.
Excellent. Matt, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, just thank you. Just quickly, I may have missed this, but I got the pieces. Could someone offer just a 2-sentence summary? Because I got the community involved, and there's cooking and there's art, but somehow I missed the summary of what this was. So could someone restate just a brief explanation of the project? That would be really helpful. And again, apologies if I missed that.
Maybe I can do that. Really the project was to promote cultural understanding and also meaning making for young kids by having the workers in the migrant community share their cooking skills, their knowledge of their culture, and music with children in the childcare programs. And the flip side of it was hoping that the workers in that community would become increasingly safe or feeling safe in being engaged with the early childhood folks. That's the small part. It's what we talked about today. Doesn't include all the courses and stuff.
Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you for bringing your partners in the project. It's great to hear about it. I think we are ready to transition. Dora, are you in a place to talk about the point in time count?
Let's see, my internet keeps
Okay.
dropping. So if I drop off, Beth, if you could take over, that would be great. So I think this is actually a great transition. This month across our BBF State Advisory Council network, we are collecting demographics of all of our stakeholders, those who participate in meetings, share information with BBF, and use information from BBF. Our definition of membership is really broad, and if you are attending this meeting or watching a recording of this meeting, you are a member. There are, across all of our convenings, we are having folks fill out this survey. And the reason that we are conducting it is because we believe strongly that voice and representation matter. We are committed to building a more diverse and equitable early childhood system, and that requires diverse stakeholders and a network to inform that system. And this survey will help to ground us both in who is around the table, or all of our tables currently, and who is missing. That in turn will help us to identify and mitigate some of the barriers and challenges to that larger participation, and eventually build a more representative and diverse network. The information that you share is confidential and will only be shared as a group. For example, the % of people from Head Start or the number of parents and primary guardians. If you have any concerns or input about how we might adjust the collection of this information moving forward, please reach out to a member of our team. It is really important that we are able to get a real count of who is sitting around our tables, and we would love to be able to address your concerns rather than missing out on your input. I am going to ask maybe someone has already done that. Perfect, there is the link. And if you have concerns, I will paste an email in the chat as well. So I'm going to ask that both SAC members and all 53 people on this call complete the survey as we move through the roll call. And in the meantime, I am going to hand this over to Flor Diaz-Smith for that roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Flor Diaz-Smith, and I am here on behalf of the State Advisory Council and of the Vermont School Boards Association, and I serve as the private chair, and we're sorry that Cheryl couldn't join us today. So I'm going to try to fill in for her too. So I'm going to do a roll call today, and I'll ask that just State Advisory Council members stay with their camera on, and everybody else, if you could please turn it off, it will help us be able to see all of our faces. Thank you for your understanding. So let's start with Renee Kelly.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all.
Okay. Kate Rogers, Agency of Education.
Hi, everyone. Kate Rogers, Early Education.
Jessica Ventmer, our new representative from the Agency of Commerce, replacing Ken Jones. Are you here?
Good afternoon, everyone. Just with ACCD, a little under the weather, so excuse my voice.
Thank you for being here. Sarah Truckle, Secretary's Office.
Hi, everyone. Sarah Truckle here from the Secretary's Office.
Thank you. Miranda Gray.
Good afternoon, everyone. Miranda Gray, Deputy Commissioner for the Child Development Division.
Thanks, Miranda. Susanna Davis. Senator Ruth Hardy.
Thanks, Flor. Hi, Ruth Hardy from the Addison Senate District. Thanks.
Thanks. Representative Jessica Brumstead. I saw you. Yeah,
I am here and from Shelburne and St. George.
Becca Webb.
Hey, everybody. Becca Webb. I'm representing Early Ed and Special Ed.
Thank you, Becca. Eddie Gale.
Hi, Eddie Gale. I'm with the A.D. Henderson Foundation, and I live in Johnson.
Christy Swenson. I don't see her. Alexis Duquette. No, either. Libby?
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, oh, there you are. Sorry, Alexis, go ahead.
It's okay. I'm a parent or a parent ambassador, and I'm here at the doctor's office with my sick kids. So I am eagerly listening.
Thanks for being here, making the time, Alexis. Libby Dalian, I see you.
Hi, everyone. Libby Dalian. I'm also a parent representative.
Thanks, Libby. Dr. Ashley Miller.
Hi, everyone. Ashley Miller, pediatrician, South Royalton Health Center. Sorry, I don't have enough service for a camera.
That's okay. Thanks for being here. Janet McLaughlin. Did I see?
Hi there. Janet McLaughlin, Executive Director of the Vermont Association for the Education of Young Children.
Thank you, Janet. Paul Dragon. I can see him. Heather Wilcock.
Hi there, Heather Wilcoxon. I'm Assistant Children's Director for HCRS, a designated mental health agency for Windsor and Windham counties.
Welcome, Heather. Dimitri.
Yeah, hi everyone, Dimitri Garter. I'm the business rep on the State Advisory Council. Good to see everybody.
Thanks, Dimitri. We have two non-voting members. Well, actually, I see Mike McGrade, which was, I had it as absent before, but I saw you, Mike, a minute ago. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for, I moved some stuff around to be able to be here. Mike McGrath, Vermont Principals Association.
Thanks for being here, Mike. So now we have two non-voting members, Erica Radke, from Director of Family and Service, DCEF.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Radke, Deputy Commissioner of Family Services Division.
Thank you, Erica. Kendall Smith is joining us from the Governor's Office as a non-voting member. See him. Okay, and as I said, we had several people that were not able to join us today. Cheryl, Ilsa from the Department of Health, Amy Johnson, Parent Child Center Network. So with that, seeing that I counted more than 10, Beth and Morgan, so I think we have more than enough for quorum anyways. So I'm looking to, our first piece of business will be to accept the minutes from September 26th. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 26th?
Moved.
Laura, I'll make that motion.
Okay, so Dimitri and then Kelly, you second it. Is that okay, Renee? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Right. Any opposed? Any abstain? Hearing none, the minutes pass unanimously. Okay. I'm going to give it back to you, Morgan.
Sure. I just want to document, Sarah, I saw you come off mute. Did you want to abstain from that vote?
I did just because I wasn't in attendance for that.
Oh, okay.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Sarah, I didn't see you on the, okay. All right.
All right, so our minutes passed and now we are moving on to the main event. We're really excited to talk to everyone today about this year's State Advisory Council recommendations. We're going to have a member of the BBF team put the current recommendations into the chat. And today we are asking the State Advisory Council for endorsement of those recommendations. And so that vote is not a binding contract. This is a endorsement of the needs of kids and families and the identification of those priorities. So just to give folks on the call a sense of the process for how SAC recommendations are developed, if you are not as familiar with that process, we hear on an annual basis priorities from our strategic plan committees. So we have 7 VCAP committees and 12 regional councils across the state. Our job at BBF is to identify all of those emerging needs and priorities, document them over the course of the year, and then work with our VCAP committees, content experts, and key partners and consult with them to develop policy recommendations that we then bring forward. We have at least 2 months of discussion with the SAC members, as well as our executive board and others. So we just want to say thank you to the entire BBF network for the last few months of review, of your feedback, of the revision process, and your engagement in that work. This year's recommendations went through some very rigorous process. We started off in a place where SAC recommendations were very tight, very brief, and very specific. That is not true to BBF and SAC form. We usually write a lot and need to pare down. We started out very specific. And then over the course of discussion over a couple of months, we actually broadened them a little bit. There were less specific recommendations about the specific strategies that we were calling attention to, and more that we were calling attention to priorities that are impacting kids and families urgently right now that we as a state need to prioritize for the coming year. We actually brought, over the course of 2 meetings, all of these recommendations to our executive board and asked them to think critically about the level of the recommendations, the types of recommendations, and how we as a board want to be thinking critically about the role of the State Advisory Council. And where we landed is it's our role in state and federal statute under Title 33, Chapter 46, and the Federal Head Start Act to call attention to the urgent gaps and needs across the early childhood sectors, to be monitoring data across those different sectors, and to annually make recommendations to say, this is where we should focus our energy and our resources. It's really calling attention to the major barriers and challenges that kids and families are facing, and putting forward an advisory tool that folks can use to inform their decisions. So this year, all of our recommendations are built and organized around the Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan. They are focusing on policy and legislative changes. And I just want to note for everyone and call attention to the fact that anytime we are putting forward recommendations, there's some tension across the public and private partners on the board. And I think that naming that is really important. Across our network, we all have very strategic and important priorities, and naming the urgent needs of our system is our collective responsibility, and making the recommendations that will move us forward in the next year is important. I also think that naming those priorities doesn't mean there isn't good work already being done. So I'm looking specifically at our legislative leaders and our state agency leaders. We recognize that so much work and so much investment is already happening in a lot of these areas. And it's our responsibility to continue calling attention to where we think we need to prioritize our efforts in the next couple of years. And that the topics you're all seeing in that list are the ones that are on fire. Those are the topics that are coming up time and time again through every single meeting where we're seeing crisis levels for kids and families. So just wanting to name the fact that there are always different strategies for how to tackle the challenges. There are different levels of investment needed on behalf of both public, private, and community partners. And these recommendations can be used as a tool to spark discussion about how to do that well in the coming year. So because we have had 2 slight changes in the recommendations since the board saw them last month, I want to call your attention to those. So again, we've had a lot of discussion. We've heard some really important feedback from the governor's office, from public and private partners. And we've made some changes in Goal 1 under All Children Have a Healthy Start. So specifically, the housing recommendations were revised. So again, wanting to name and call attention to the fact that we recognize there is a housing crisis, and Vermont has already made so many efforts to support kids and families and the communities related to housing. So these recommendations in no way, shape, or form are diminishing the work that's already been done, but it's calling attention to the importance of housing as a critical basic need for children. And it outlines broader, less specific strategies for how we as a state should be thinking about our priorities and investment. I also want to call folks' attention to a little bit of data, because we did have some of our private partners say we'd really like to see some of the data that's informing some of these recommendations. So the Vermont Housing Coalition to End Homelessness in 2022 did a point in time count of those that were experiencing homelessness. And what we saw is that the number of people in households with children that were homeless increased by 130% from pre-pandemic levels. So it rose to 857 in 2022. And then related is the kind of long-standing data and research we know from Dr. Jack Shonkoff's team at the Harvard Center on the Developing Child, where they are talking about the importance of early childhood experiences, and that homelessness in early childhood and that exposure is creating an environment of toxic stress. And so that strong, prolonged activation of the body's stress response in the system creates both short and long-term changes in a child's brain and their development. So what we know about those life course trajectories is that early childhood stress can actually impact that child's development over time and lead to permanent changes in brain structure and function. So again, I really appreciate that our board is leaning in and actually saying we value evidence and data to inform policy. That is what you should say if you have questions about where these recs are coming from and what data supports them. Those are just two examples of both the impact now on kids and families and the long-term effects that are leading this to be an urgent priority across the system. So again, we've addressed that recommendation. We've removed some of the very specific components of that because we have seen some tension arise there and are excited about where we landed and calling attention to this as a basic need for kids and families. The second area I want to call your attention to is goal 2. So under families and communities play a leading role in children's well-being. The first recommendation changed. It originally included language around requiring 2 family members or at least 1 family member as a part of study sections and legislatively mandated bodies. We received some questions and concerns about that. We did a lot of outreach to legislative counsel and others in the legislative branch to understand what this means and how to think about it. And what we learned is that there's no formal process for developing task forces, study sections, councils, and committees, and that it's really important from both a monitoring perspective, but also a formal process perspective to ensure that there's a process for how those things are created, monitored, and tracked over time. So the intent, it still remains the same in this area. It's that individuals with lived experience should be included when things are created, but now the recommendation is really about developing a formal process by which we are creating new bodies within the legislature. So the examples are study sections, councils, and task forces. How do we make sure that we are not tapping the same individuals to serve on each of those different newly created committees and bodies and making sure that we have representation? And I think one thing that's really exciting is that solely by writing the recommendations, we have seen some change in the legislature where partners are actually considering this recommendation already and thinking critically about how this would work inside the legislature. So just as an example, we had those conversations with Leg Council and others, and they are thinking and bringing this to leadership in the legislature to say, how could we develop this? What would it look like? What are those lists and what would the protocol be? So I want to pause and recognize that we have several new members of the SAC. We also have several members that are not present, but wanting to open the floor and ask if folks have additional questions, concerns about the recommendations as they're written, comments about the changes that we just identified, and then also offering a moment for some of our agency leaders who are who are abstaining from the vote to make a couple of comments. So SAC members, questions, comments, abstentions, exciting feedback.
Morgan, is this a time just for those edits?
Yes, happy to have feedback right now too. So just to be clear, when we vote to endorse the recommendations, the language says with any edits. So if there's feedback, we can try to incorporate some of that as well. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just wondering if you had feedback like for the whole piece or just those 2 changes. But it sounds like the whole thing we can talk
Yeah,
about now?
please. Yep.
Alright.
We just wanted to call attention to where there were specific changes since the full board reviewed these and discussed them a month
Right.
ago.
I just want to draw attention to goal 1, bullet point 1, promote and invest in care coordination. And specifically the last sentence, I'm not asking for a change, I'm just drawing attention to it. Explore creative ways to fund and integrate services across the sector. You know, we have concerns at the VPA around people being interested in the Ed Fund, the pre-K to 12 Ed Fund. We always have that concern. It's always something that different stakeholders are hopeful to tap into, and it's already strained in many ways with, you know, some concerns on the horizon. So I do not think that explore creative ways to fund means the Ed Fund, but I just want to underscore that we are supportive of creative ways that are not that.
That's fair. I appreciate you calling attention to that, Mike. I know that there are often very strong feelings and comments made about the Ed Fund. And all I can say right now in the context of that recommendation is that that was not a factor or discussed related to the care coordination efforts. But I think it's always fair for you to be able to say there are concerns around the Ed Fund. Jessica.
Thanks, Morgan. I just wanted to ask a question around goal 2. I love it. I mean, this is something we as legislators struggle with every day. How do we get more voices into the legislation, the work we do, which is why we hold hearings in our committee rooms, in the evenings, always trying to find more opportunities for that. And often I look to BBF and the regional councils to help when we invite Morgan in a lot to talk, and Beth to talk about that and ask about, well, what are the regional councils saying about this issue or that issue? So I'm curious about some of your ideas about how to change that. Is that to more formalize that the regional, maybe members of the regional council would be somehow more available? They're pretty available now, it seems like, but I'm just curious.
So it's a great question. And I think that one of the things that we talk a lot about in the BBF network is it's not always that more is better, it's that representation is better, right? So how do we make sure that we have diverse voices that represent as many groups and entities as possible so that we understand what it means from a lived experience perspective, whether it's providers, educators, families, community partners. So I don't want you to think that when we're calling attention to this area, it's that we are asking the legislature to pack in additional people and what that means. It's that related to the study sections and the creation of different boards, it's identifying who the right people to be at that table and that board and that study section and that task force are. Who are the people that need to be in the room to be able to inform and advise in a way that reflects diverse voice of those most impacted, right? So I think that is really where we're trying to push on that body of recommendations and recognizing that those are areas that we at BBF are constantly trying to improve on as well.
That's really helpful, Morgan, because we struggle with that as well. In other committees and things I've been a part of, often when we try so hard to go into a specific area, we end up with no one showing up at the hearing. And so even the little thing that came up with the Addison project, I noticed the importance of paying one to be participating is really important. Something Cheryl talked about, which I totally agree with. And I think we have to be better about recognizing the importance of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes. And I do think I want to just say thank you to you and to Ruth and all of our legislative partners who really are using the entire BBF network as advisory bodies, and you're using them as mechanisms to elevate voice because you're recognizing that they are the experts within communities, within their content areas of expertise. So thank you. Mike, I saw your hand go up and then come back down.
I was just gonna say the same thing that Representative Brumsted just said, like the compensation element, that a lot of times the stakeholders who are not asked, I really love that we're talking about, like thinking about, well, who's involved and what is the process for selecting people. And just, I agree that thinking about compensation, either monetarily or whether that's some credits or professional learning or something in the internship, because those marginalized folks, it's the most expensive for them to come into a space and volunteer on a subcommittee or a hearing or something like that too.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. And I will say, I think that compensation is another area where we're struggling in this body of recommendations, because there aren't always formalized mechanisms or infrastructure to pay families or to pay those with lived experience. So just naming that, I think that through the BBF network, we are really trying to prioritize in every way, shape, or form, elevating family voice, compensating families as partners in this work. Not, we are asking you to attend a meeting, but you are partners in decision making. What should we be prioritizing? What does it mean? And let us value your time, whether it's through, again, formal payment or childcare. And we have the ability to do that. And I also recognize that other partners within state government and in the legislature don't necessarily have all of those mechanisms. So I do think it's calling attention to an urgent need and something we need to pay attention to. We don't have a formal strategy for how to do that well collectively, and that's okay, but it's something we need to be talking about. How could we do this well? How are we creative, and what does that mean? And things like the preschool development grant provide opportunities for federal funds to support some of that work. And there is an entire section about how we are maximizing family choice, identifying and partnering with families as leaders, and providing every opportunity for engagement. And so even though there aren't necessarily mechanisms within state government or in the legislature, there are other creative opportunities for us to support that work on behalf of the state. All right, Miranda.
Thanks, Morgan. I just had a statement, if I may. I'd like to start by saying I value the work of Building Bright Futures and the State Advisory Council. I appreciate the collaborative environment and the goals of the council. So thank you. Today, I will be abstaining from voting as I'm an appointed official. Many of the BBF SAC recs that we're going over today have fiscal and policy implications. And so until the governor's budget is final, I will not be able to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda. Others? Go ahead, Kate.
Hi, Morgan. Thank you, everybody. The Agency of Education is also going to abstain from the vote today. The AOE values the important work of the SAC and its focus on young children of families, of course, as well as its efforts to inform and be informed by the agency and by schools. However, as Secretary French's designee on the SAC, I must abstain from voting on the policy recommendations at this time. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Heather.
I'm really pleased with the modifications that have been made since the last time I've been able to see them in a number of areas. And I know we're not at the voting. I do not need to abstain. I'm excited to get to vote because I'm in favor of it. But I really appreciate the way of being specific enough while being general enough that things don't get kind of in the weeds and then lost in translation. So thank you for taking the feedback and hearing the voices that contributed to some of the feedback and edits.
Thank you, Heather. Eddie.
Hi, Morgan. I almost feel like I don't have anything to say that wouldn't be redundant to your introduction. But just there's this value even of having worked through the tensions that I think is very positive. You know, ultimately we've identified a lot of things that we want to achieve, and we can have some differences on the actual strategies for achieving everyone. And just noting that maybe we have a couple of points of tension, but we also have 95% of what's going on here, stuff that really should be done for children, and that Building Bright Futures has pointed that out. And ultimately, the value of the state council is the ability of its members to move forward on these recommendations. And so ideally, we're in a place where we all can contribute toward doing that.
Thank you, Eddie. Libby.
I'm just echoing what's been said already, but I really appreciate the changes since last time. It feels like a lot of really important things are covered, and it's specific recommendations, but it also leaves some flexibility in how it might be implemented in different contexts. So yeah, I really like it.
Thank you so much. All right, so I want to quickly document for Floor and members of the BBF team who are vote counting right now that we have written votes from Elisa Stahlberg from VDH, Amy Johnson representing the PCC network, Cheryl Wilcox from the Department of Mental Health. So Floor, I'm going to turn it over to you to vote on our recommendations and to list the motion language.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. I'm just going to give the opportunity for others to have a last bit. Do you guys need any clarification before we go ahead and vote, or have any other questions for our partners?
Can I get it again? Just
Yes, Mike.
just a brief synopsis from one of the agencies about why they're abstaining again. Like, Kate, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here. I just don't quite understand why the Agency of Education has to abstain.
So Kate, I can jump in and just say, go ahead, you can respond as well, but just to let folks know that I did talk with members of the governor's team, and there's just concern that because the governor's formal budget has not been released that shows the different areas of prioritization, it's really hard to have the formal appointees and the designees be able to vote. So one big difference is that even though you are all governor appointed to the board, Deputy Commissioner Gray is a formal appointee of the governor in state government. Kate Rogers is Secretary French's designee that is a formal appointee of the governor. So slight difference in their roles and ability to vote without having that formal budget moving forward. Kate, Miranda, any other comments or feedback?
No, thank you. I couldn't find my unmute button, so thank you. That was a good explanation, so thank you.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I'm also abstaining from the vote as Secretary Sampson's designee on the board, but in alignment with Deputy Commissioner Gray as we move through the budget and policy process this fall.
So I think what's important for folks to know is that we are a public-private partnership. We do require public and private discussion about all of these issues. And what you are not hearing from our agency leaders is that they are voting against the recommendations. They are abstaining from the vote, and we will still be able to formally endorse the recommendations as the primary advising to the governor and the administration. So what we are doing by endorsing these recommendations is saying, here are the things we want you to consider as you're making decisions. It's not a binding contract. It is, here are the things we are asking you to think through and things we'd like to see you prioritize as you're moving through your work, and recognizing that there are differences in the strategies. It was a great question though, Mike. Thank you. Go ahead, Flor.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so the motion for the language for the motion, sorry, the Building Bright Future State Advisory Council is an advisory body to the Vermont Early Childhood System, moves to endorse the recommendations with any edits. I believe we didn't have really any edits. Everybody was okay as it was. So moves to endorse the recommendations that serve to inform the ongoing work of the systems to support children and families. Can I have a motion to endorse this slate of policies?
Or I can.
Okay, thank you. Janet, is that you?
Yeah, I can second.
And who second? Sorry, you guys were fast.
I'm sorry.
I can
Becca,
second Flor.
is that you, Becca?
Yeah.
Okay. So Janet moves and Becca seconds. Any more discussion Otherwise, all those in favor, please signify. I'm gonna go for hands so we can see the hands in the screen and I can count how many there are. Okay, so just leave them up there for a minute so that, and Beth help me out too. Okay, 1, 2, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13. I see 13, is that right? And I'll put mine up too. Oh, one more, which just went up.
So I'm seeing 13.
Okay. All right.
You can keep going with the vote language on the floor.
Okay. Any opposed? Give time for people to put their hands down. Oops, I have to lower my hand. Mike, lower your hand too. I didn't see any opposed and any abstain. Just for the record, do you mind putting your hand up? We know who you are, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So thank you. I want to say thank you again. This will be printed in the upcoming State of Vermont's Children and shared with all decision makers. This is an important role that Building Bright Future plays as outlined in the state statute. And it's particularly important with this Council of Public and Private Partners to be able to work together towards a shared vision. So I hope that we keep working on that. And this is an important foundation. The important foundation for me, at least seeing you guys and working through this past 2 years, is our commitment to equity and humanity and justice for all our kids and families. So I hope we can keep working on that together.
Thank you, Flor. Thank you for calling for that vote.
Despite.
I am excited to announce that we, as a State Advisory Council body, have formally endorsed the 2023 State Advisory Council recommendations. And unfortunately, we are out of time to be able to have a major fun discussion about how everyone is going to be using those. Don't think you're getting away without having that conversation. That will be next, but just wanting to say, thank you all, and thank you to our agencies and to our members of the governor's team for identifying areas where we can be clarifying this work, where we can be doing this better, and really seeing this network as an advisory body and being able to listen and hear the work that's happening and use it to inform your decisions. So thank you all very much, and we will see you next month. Bye all.
Thank you.